It's Michael Negron. That's N as in Nancy, Egron.
I was curious if that was last name was going to get pronounced like the drink.
It's Negro. I mean, I think most people with my last name are Puerto Rican, which is what I am, and it's pronounced Negron. But
Mm,
it usually gets anglicized as Negron, which is perfectly fine with me.
gotcha. All right. Well, just jumping into kind of what we're talking about today. Small businesses, I want to kind of start off, does cover kind of a wide swath of things. So when we're talking about impact to small businesses, what are we talking about here?
And you're talking about the tariffs.
Yeah, when it comes to the tariffs, yeah.
Yes, well, look, there are more than 30 million small businesses in the United States. The vast majority of businesses are, in fact, small businesses. 99% of the businesses in this country are considered small. And what they're facing is that the president's tariffs and the chaotic, uncertain way in which he's gone about it with change deadlines and constant threats of new tariffs and shifts in policy, and then the actual cost impact of the tariffs themselves. It's really imposing a tax, like a Trump turbulence tax, on small businesses, and they're facing it in terms of higher input costs. They're facing it in terms of that uncertainty are leading businesses to delay investments. They're leading businesses to slow down in hiring. And in the last couple of weeks, we've received some data that is showing that's bearing out in the economy with lower job creation, with lower investment, with slower growth. And so small businesses are really struggling with the economic environment that we're in. And it only promises to get more difficult in the months to come.
Yeah, that was something I kind of wanted to see, and you kind of just touched on it there was, that it's already been a bad economy for small businesses, correct?
I think there have been certainly headwinds over the last couple of years with higher prices. Higher inflation has been an issue, although we've seen over the last few years also tremendous entrepreneurship and growth. And so I think you've seen both good and bad things happening in the economy for small businesses. It's a good sign that people have been the 4 years under the Biden administration had the highest number of new business applications. These are people who are uh, looking to get the federal tax ID to start their business, the highest on record over the last 4 years. Each year was a record breaking year, and so that was evidence that people were going out and taking a chance on themselves. But certainly over the last 7 months, particularly with the specter of the tariffs, but I think also in the ways in which they've been talked about, where the rates it's hard to predict where those tariff rates will be. That has created a lot of uncertainty among small businesses, and that's not a good thing.
Absolutely. And I had a question. It brain farted. All right, so I'll move on to my next. So, something I've noted, and I was talking to, I think, a compatriot of yours earlier this morning, was about how kind of the mess of tariffs that we've seen and how it's been so chaotic. Here's what I was actually going to ask. How much? Because I think people, when they hear small business, they imagine you're just running to a mom and pop shop. You run to the local store to buy what you need to sell for the day, or you go to Costco or something like that. But could you maybe dive into a little bit of how do our supply lines, in America work right now? How much do small businesses rely on other countries to get the products they use, to get the products they sell?
Yes, well, small businesses get their products in a whole host of ways. Sometimes it is you go to the Costco or you go to the Sam's Club and you buy products in bulk, or you purchase through platforms like Amazon and you can buy in bulk that way. In other cases, there are distributors, right? If you are a restaurant, you likely just an independent, like not talking about a McDonald's, but an independent restaurant. Maybe you got one location, two locations, you will often have distributors that you work with, whether it's you're an Italian restaurant and there's a wine importer that you use that you work with to get your Italian wines, or same equivalent for other products, whether it's cheeses and things like that. And so you get your supplies in a whole host of ways. Sometimes it's a big retailer, other times it's going to be just another small business whose job it is to get products that paper products, food products, whatever, to small businesses. And so, and in many cases, those products are imported. So to go back to my independent Italian restaurant, those European Union tariffs will affect the price of that wine that comes in, or the price of that Italian or Spanish cheese that comes in. That is going to be higher, and that is paid at the port of entry. So whether it comes in via plane, comes in via container on a ship, or anything in between, that importer most likely in that example is paying that higher tariff, and then they have to decide: am I going to eat that cost? Am I going to charge all or some of it to the business that bought it from me? And let's say in this case that they split it with that Italian restaurant, you have a 20% tariff, and the importer splits it with that restaurant, so that the restaurant has a 10% price increase. Then that restaurant has to decide, okay, am I going to try to recoup some of this by charging it to consumers in the form of prices on the menu, or am I just going to eat it? And so what we've been seeing so far, Goldman Sachs has done some analysis on this, is that to date, businesses have been absorbing about 60% of the price of the cost of tariffs, and the consumers have been absorbing the rest. But ultimately, economists, including the same Goldman analysis, expects that as the tariffs persist, 70% of that cost is going to get passed to the consumer. And so that's why we've been seeing in the early months, inflation hadn't been going up as quickly in the early months of the tariff wars, because businesses were trying to wait and see because of that uncertainty. Well, maybe the president will back off. Maybe the tariff rates will be much lower. So they weren't passing as much of those costs to consumers, but they also weren't investing in themselves. They also weren't hiring as quickly. But now that we see it persisting, the most recent inflation numbers showed that we're starting to get back to about 3% in inflation. We're seeing job growth has slowed significantly. It's fallen off a cliff, really, in the last report on Friday. We've seen business investment decline in this last quarter. We've seen consumer spending cut in half from what it was last year. And so we're starting to see these effects, because now we're in month 4 of Trump's trade war. And as month after month, you're going to see those effects more and more. Small businesses will get hit, consumers will get hit, and it's all just a recipe for economic slowdown.
Gotcha. And then kind of speaking on that chaos of this trade war, there's been a lot of tariffs tossed out from both, from the Trump administration and then from other countries kind of in retaliation. Are there any that you have seen that have specifically kind of ignited your concern around the impact to American businesses, whether that's from Trump or from other countries?
Well, what we've seen, at least in the last few months, is countries have tended to not retaliated. You have retaliation from China, you have some retaliation from Canada, but most countries have kept their powder dry in hopes of negotiating something with the Trump administration. And so what we've seen is a number of countries. They originally, back in April, Trump's advisors promised 90 deals in 90 days. Well, that hasn't happened. It's been a significantly lower number. It's also been more than 90 days because the president moved his deadlines. But we've seen a limited number of deals. And so you have countries that are facing 20, 30, 40% tariff rates. And even the deals that have been negotiated are anywhere from 10 to 41% effective tariff rates. And so the outcome of that is that the business is facing that cost. And so we're primarily doing this to ourselves through the president's policies. That's why it is essentially a national sales tax, a Trump turbulence tax. The businesses are on the front lines of it, the small businesses in particular, and they've been trying to shield their consumers. But the longer this goes on, the more you're going to see this in terms of higher prices for consumers, and that is bad for the businesses. Right now, the businesses are shielding their consumers by absorbing more of that cost. And that's bad for the business. But then once they're forced to pass that along, that's bad for the business as well, because the consumers will likely shop less. Consumers will be in a worse off state, and that's just bad all around.
And then I do want to ask, obviously there's been quite a lot of criticisms around this trade war and its kind of multiple stated goals, because it doesn't seem like it does exactly have a clear one. But is there any possibility, just from your understanding of how these have worked historically, could this trade war, could these tariffs actually benefit consumers? I know there's been some talk of trying to get people to buy more domestically. There's been talk of trying to get them to be able to compete more internationally. Do you see tariffs as a route to do either of those things?
Tariffs can be effective as a narrower tool. What the president has done is these blanket universal tariffs with a lot of different goals. Sometimes it's about fentanyl. That's what he's justified as tariffs against Mexico and Canada. He's justified it on the basis of crime. He's justified it on the basis of trade imbalances. He hit Brazil with a 50% tariff because he doesn't like how the government there is treating a former president Bolsonaro who tried to overthrow the government. And so you've got different reasons, but the effect is across the board tariffs. I think we're going to be hard pressed to see that really benefit consumers. It takes a long time for companies to reshore their manufacturing. And there are just some things that we're not going to make here. We're not going to really do a good job of producing coffee. We're not going to be very effective at producing bananas. Some things are climate based. Other things, I don't know that the United States is going to be the destination to produce clothing that is affordable or produce toys that is affordable just because of where manufacturing has gone. That's why this kind of blanket approach has been so bad. I think a targeted approach where you're focused on semiconductors, right? We want to bring semiconductor production back to the United States. And we had a bipartisan bill that did that and it is doing that. The Biden administration focused on electric vehicles. And so we had and I think we still have a 100% or more tariff against domestic Chinese produced electric vehicles because they are cheaper than the US versions. And at the same time, we had support. So people could go to your dealer and you would get cash on the hood, right? So you get the tax credit, but it would be reflected in your purchase price. You didn't have to go seek it after. And we saw major growth in domestic EV purchasing. And that's an example of a targeted policy. But what we're doing here is just, it's across the board. It's hitting everybody. And it just doesn't make sense. And it's hard, and it's been hard for the businesses to predict, which is why we've seen business investment decline by an annual rate of about 16% in the last quarter. We've seen the jobs growth really just fall off a cliff in the jobs numbers released Friday. It's not looking like it's a recipe for success for right now.
Absolutely. And you kind of touched on it there, but with a lot of these tariffs going into effect this week, obviously there's not going to be some item line on their receipt that says tariffs, extra 399 or something like that. How will consumers likely start seeing the impact of these tariffs?
Well, they're starting to see it already. Just to be clear, I'll give you an example. Toy prices, because toys are largely produced in China and other countries in Far East, are already up 3.5% just over 3 months since March, when the president first upped tariffs on China. We've seen just the price of some core baby goods like strollers, car seats, baby monitors up more than 20% since April. We're seeing it in parents are learning to adjust to it. We've seen a survey recently that showed that more parents than ever, about 2/3, are doing their back to school shopping early. And when asked, they cite tariffs. This is a National Retail Federation that released a survey recently. And the reason they're doing it is they are expecting prices to go up in the coming months. And in fact, we've got economists predicting this. We've got economists predicting that the price of clothing and of shoes will climb by about 40% in the coming months, computers by about 20% in the coming months. And so that's a recipe for as we move through to the holiday season, consumers can expect to see higher prices, maybe some reduced selection as retailers make choices about which products to keep on their shelves because of the tariffs. And so you've got a lot of experts predicting we're really going to start to feel those impacts as we approach the holiday season. And that's not a good thing.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's the extent of questions I had around all this. Is there anything else you feel important to mention when it comes to these small businesses or the tariffs that are kind of coming this week?
Yes. I want to just hit upon something that I talked about, but I want to go just a little bit deeper, and that is the fact that businesses and small businesses in particular are eating the cost of these tariffs. We've seen in June there was a survey conducted by the Harvard Business School and MIT that found that 44% of small businesses had reported in June, so this is a couple of months ago, that their revenues had dropped, and that was nearly a doubling from the number from May. And so that's an effect that we're seeing even before the tariffs start to really go into effect at the higher levels that the president had threatened. And this survey also found an average revenue drop of about 13%. And so that's real money, and that's real money out of the business owners' pockets, small business owners' pockets, and it's just something that's going to persist in the months to come, to the benefit of nobody. Both consumers and small businesses are getting hurt by this trade war, and it really is a tax that everybody's having to face.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, Michael. Really appreciate you giving me some time this morning.
Yes, thank you.